The days that followed were a blur of tension and anticipation. Ethan and Lisa found themselves in a strange limbo, neither free to continue their work nor completely shut down. The artifact remained under heavy guard, its surface still glowing, faintly as if it were alive and waiting. Security personnel monitored every move they made, their presence a constant reminder of the stakes involved. Yet despite the restrictions, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping away. "They're stalling," Ethan muttered one evening, pacing the lab like a caged animal. "Every hour we waste is another hour someone else could take." Control. Lisa sat at her workstation, scrolling through the data they had compiled. She looked up, her expression calm but weary. "You're not going to rush into this, Ethan. Not when the consequences are so big. We'll drag this out. As long as they can abate, analyze, second-guess. And while they do that, the opportunity slips through our fingers." Ethan shot back, his frustration evident. "We've seen what's possible. We know how important this is. But sitting here doing nothing, it's driving me crazy." Lisa sighed, leaning back in her chair. "I get it. Trust me, I do. But we have to play the game their way for now. Push too hard and they'll shut us out completely." Ethan stopped pacing, running a hand through his hair. He knew she was right. Still, the thought of letting someone else dictate the future of their discovery gnawed at him. This wasn't just about science or exploration, it was about trust. Humanity's first contact with an alien civilization was a responsibility he wasn't willing to hand over lightly. "Fine," Ethan said finally, his voice quieter but no less determined. "We wait, but we don't stop preparing. If they won't act, then we'll make sure they have no choice." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking we need proof," Ethan replied, his mind racing. "Something undeniable. Something that forces them to see what's at stake." Lisa frowned, concern creeping into her expression. "You mean activate the portal again? Without permission?" Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "If we can show them what's on the other side, if we can bring back evidence, then they'll have to listen." Lisa stood up, crossing the room to stand in front of him. "That's risky, Ethan. Really risky. What if something goes wrong? What if they catch us?" "They already caught us," Ethan pointed out. "And look where that got us, stuck in this lab, playing by their rules. At least this way, we'd be taking action, doing something." Lisa stared at him for a long moment, toying between caution and conviction. Finally, she let out a slow breath. "All right, but we do it smart. No rushing and blind this time." Ethan nodded, relief washing over him. "Agreed. Let's start planning." Over the next 2 days, they worked in secret, using the limited access they still had to the artifact to prepare for another activation. They studied the symbols etched into its surface, piecing together the sequence that had opened the portal before. Lisa focused on setting up safeguards, cameras, sensors, and recording devices to document everything. Experimented with different methods of interaction, trying to refine the process. "We need to make sure the portal stays stable this time," Lisa said one night, her eyes glued to the monitors. "Last time, it felt unpredictable." "I know," Ethan admitted, adjusting the settings on one of the machines. "But I think I can control it better now. It's responding to my thoughts, Lisa. Like it's learning from me." Lisa glanced at him, her expression thoughtful. "Do you think it's choosing us? Testing us, maybe?" Ethan replied, his tone reflective. "Or maybe it's just designed to adapt. Either way, we need to prove we're ready." By the third night, everything was in place. The lab was quiet, the guards stationed outside, unaware of the preparations underway. Ethan and Lisa moved quickly, their movements deliberate and precise. They positioned cameras around the artifact, ensuring every angle would be captured. Lisa double-checked the sensors, making sure they were calibrated to record even the smallest fluctuations in energy. "Ready?" Lisa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan nodded, taking a deep breath. "As I'll ever be." He stepped up to the artifact, placing his hands on its cool surface. Closing his eyes, he focused intently, letting the familiar warmth spread through his palms. The symbols began to glow, shifting and rearranging themselves into the sequence he had memorized. A low hum filled the room, growing louder with each passing second. "Energy levels are spiking," Lisa reported, her eyes glued to the monitors. "Stability readings are holding steady." Ethan pushed harder, pouring all his focus into maintaining the connection. The artifact responded, its glow intensifying until it filled the entire lab with light. Then, with a sudden flash, the portal appeared, a swirling vortex of colors and energy that seemed to stretch infinitely in every direction. "It's working," Lisa whispered, her voice filled with awe. "It's real." Ethan opened his eyes, his heart pounding. "Let's go." Without hesitation, they stepped through the portal, leaving the lab behind. On the other side, the alien world awaited them, its beauty even more breathtaking than before. Twin suns cast golden light across the landscape, illuminating towering structures and shimmering plants. The air vibrated with a soft hum, almost musical in its rhythm. "Stay close," Lisa said, clutching the scanner tightly. "Don't have much time." Ethan nodded, leading the way toward the central structure they had visited during their first journey. As they approached, the same tall, iridescent beings emerged from the shadows, their glowing eyes fixed on the newcomers. This time, however, they weren't alone. Dozens of others joined them, forming a silent circle around Ethan and Lisa. "They're watching us," Lisa murmured, her voice tense, "like they're waiting for something." Ethan stepped forward cautiously, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. One of the beings tilted its head, studying him with an intelligence that felt ancient and profound. Then, without warning, it extended a slender hand, and a series of symbols appeared in the air, the same symbols etched into the artifact. "They're communicating," Ethan said, his voice filled with wonder, "showing us something." Lisa activated the scanner, capturing every detail. The symbols shifted and rearranged themselves, forming patterns that hinted at meaning. Though neither of them fully understood, they could sense the intent of message. A warning, perhaps even an invitation. Before they could decipher more, the beings stepped back, gesturing toward the horizon. Following their lead, Ethan and Lisa turned to see a massive holographic projection rising from the ground. It depicted galaxies, stars, and planets, all connected by glowing lines. At the center of the image was Earth, its blue-green surface glowing faintly. "They're showing us our place," Ethan realized aloud, "our connection to everything else." Lisa nodded, her eyes wide with amazement. "This isn't just about travel. It's about unity, about understanding." As the hologram faded, the beings turned and began moving away, disappearing into the distance. Ethan and Lisa exchanged a glance, knowing it was time to leave. They had seen enough to prove their claims, enough to change the course of history. "We need to go," Ethan said finally, his voice firm, "before the portal closes." They retraced their steps, returning to the shimmering gateway. Stepping through, they found themselves back in the lab, the portal collapsing behind them. The cameras and sensors had recorded everything's alien world, the beings, the holographic map. It was undeniable proof. "Well," Lisa said, breaking the silence. "Now what?" Ethan smiled faintly, his resolve unwavering. "Now we show them. This time they won't have a choice." Ethan and Lisa stumbled back into the lab, their breaths coming in short gasps, as if they had been running. The portal behind them shimmered for a moment longer before collapsing into nothingness, leaving only the faint hum of residual energy. In the air, for several seconds, neither of them spoke. They simply stood there, staring at the empty space where the gateway had been, trying to process everything they had just experienced. Finally, Lisa broke the silence. "That was unreal," she said, her voice shaky but filled with wonder. "I can't believe we actually did it." Ethan nodded slowly, his mind still reeling from the encounter. "It wasn't just about crossing over," he said, his tone thoughtful. "They were waiting for us, testing us, seeing if we're ready." Lisa frowned, turning to face him. "Ready for what? To join some kind of interstellar club? Or to become part of something bigger than ourselves?" "Both, maybe," Ethan replied. "But one thing's clear, they don't take this lightly. Whoever those beings are, they're advanced, far beyond anything we've ever imagined. And they didn't just hand us answers, no? They gave us clues. Pieces of a puzzle we'll have to solve ourselves. Right. Lisa crossed her arms, her expression growing serious. And what happens when people find out? We can't keep this quiet forever. Someone's going to notice the energy spike, the missing artifact readings. Readings everything. Ethan sighed, rubbing his temples. He knew she was right. Their unauthorized experiment hadn't gone unnoticed. Security cameras monitored every corner of the lab, and the artifact's sudden activation would raise alarms. It was only a matter of time before someone came knocking. We'll deal with that when it happens, Ethan said firmly. Right. Now, we need to focus on what matters. We've been given a chance, a responsibility, to share what we've learned. But we have to do it the right way. The right way, Lisa echoed, raising an eyebrow. You mean without letting the military turn this into a weapon? Or handing it over to politicians who will exploit it for power? Ethan hesitated, then nodded. Exactly. This isn't just about Earth anymore. It's about connection between worlds, between species. If we screw this up, we could lose everything. Lisa studied him for a moment, her sharp green eyes searching his face. She trusted Ethan more than anyone else on the team, but even she couldn't ignore the risks. What they had discovered was monumental. Yes, but it was also dangerous. Humanity wasn't ready for something like this. Not yet. Before either of them could say more, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway outside the lab. Both froze, exchanging a glance of panic. They weren't alone anymore. What do we do? Lisa whispered urgently, her voice barely audible. Ethan's mind raced. There was no time to hide the evidence. The monitors still displayed data from their experiments, and the artifact itself was glowing faintly, surface etched with symbols that hadn't been there before. They were caught, and there was no denying what they'd done. We tell the truth, Ethan said finally, his voice steady despite the situation. We explain what we found, why it matters. Maybe they'll listen. Lisa didn't look convinced, but she nodded reluctantly. Together, they turned toward the door just as it swung open, revealing Agent Ryan Carter and a group of security personnel. Carter was a tall, broad-shouldered man in his 40s, with close-cropped hair and an unreadable expression. His presence commanded authority, and the armed guards flanking him made it clear this wasn't a friendly visit. At Dr. Monroe, Mr. Cole Carter said, his voice calm but firm. Mind telling me what exactly is going on here? Ethan stepped forward, meeting Carter's gaze head-on. We activated the artifact, he admitted, choosing his words carefully. We opened a portal, a gateway to another world. Carter raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. Another world. It's quite the claim. It's true, Lisa interjected, stepping beside Ethan. We didn't mean to break protocol, but we had to see it through. The artifact responded. To us. Showed us things we never thought possible. Entire civilizations, advanced technology, connections between stars and dimensions, it's all real. Carter studied them for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he gestured to one of his men, who moved to inspect the artifact. The glow had dimmed significantly, but the symbols remained visible, pulsing faintly as if alive. And you expect me to believe this? Carter asked, his tone neutral. That two researchers managed to crack alien technology in 3 days, something our best scientists have been working on for years. It sounds impossible, I know, Ethan said, his voice earnest. But we wouldn't lie about something like this. Look at the data, the readings. Everything points to what we're saying. Carter glanced at the monitors, and back at Ethan and Lisa. Even if I wanted to believe you and A, I'm not saying I do this changes everything. Do you realize the implications? The political fallout? The risk of exposure? You understand? The risks, Lisa said quickly. But think about the opportunities. Faster-than-light travel, new sources of energy. Partnerships with other civilizations, it's a chance to redefine humanity's place in the universe. Carter frowned, clearly torn.
Oh.
On one hand, the potential benefits were staggering. On the other, the dangers were equally immense. If word got out prematurely, panic could spread. Governments might try to seize control, weaponizing the technology before it was fully understood. And then there was the unknown factor the beings on. The other side of the portal? Were they allies? Enemies? Something else entirely? This isn't a decision I can make alone, Carter said finally, his voice heavy with resignation. Higher-ups will need to be informed. Until then, consider yourselves under house arrest. No further experiments. No contact with anyone. Outside this facility, Ethan opened his mouth to protest, but Lisa placed a hand on his arm, silencing him. Arguing wouldn't help. For now, they had to play along. Understood, Lisa said, her tone measured. But please, Agent Carter, don't shut this down. Not until you've seen the data. Talk to the right people. This is too important. To throw away. Carter hesitated, then nodded curtly. I'll see what I can do. But don't get your hopes up. People don't always react well to change. With that, he motioned for his team to leave, though 2 guards remained stationed outside the lab. As the door closed behind them, Ethan let out a long breath, sinking into a nearby chair. That went better than expected, he muttered, though. His tone was far from relieved. Don't kid yourself, Lisa replied, pacing the room. They're not going to let us off easy. If anything, this is just the beginning. Ethan nodded grimly. Then we prepare. Document everything. Make sure they understand what's at stake. Lisa stopped pacing, turning to face him. And if they decide to lock it away, to bury it so deep no one ever sees it again? Were surface cells were of set on as a cell of sour sense and sen and sem sen s and so on ssn s and ss and sen ssn 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 and ssn says and sen ssn says so and ss. Met her gaze, his resolve unwavering. Then we fight. Whatever it takes. The next few hours passed in tense silence. Ethan and Lisa worked tirelessly, compiling reports, organizing data, and creating visual presentations to support their claims. Every detail mattered, every symbol, every energy reading, every interaction with the artifact. By the time morning arrived, they had assembled a comprehensive dossier, complete with holographic simulations of the alien world they had visited. When Carter returned later that day, accompanied by a small delegation of government officials, Ethan and Lisa were ready. They presented their findings with clarity and passion, painting a picture of a future where humanity reached beyond its limits, forging connections across galaxies. The officials listened intently, their expressions ranging from skepticism to awe as the presentation concluded. Carter leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of him. Impressive, he admitted. But you're asking us to trust you. To take a leap of faith based on theories and possibilities. Not just theory, Ethan insisted. We've seen it. Lived it. Those beings, we communicated with them. They showed us their world, their knowledge. This isn't about conquest or domination. It's about partnership. One of the officials, a woman in her 50s with sharp features and piercing blue eyes, spoke up. And what makes you think humanity is ready for something like this? History shows us that whenever we gain access to powerful tools, we misuse them. Wars, exploitation, destruction, it's inevitable. That's why we need oversight, Lisa chimed in. Not secrecy, not control, but collaboration. An international effort with guidelines and safeguards in place. We can't let fear stop us from taking the next step. The room fell silent as the officials exchanged glances, weighing the options. Finally, Carter stood, his expression resolute. You've made your case, he said. But the decision won't be ours alone. This goes higher. In the meantime, the artifact stays here, under strict supervision. Oh my. No further experiments without clearance. Ethan and Lisa exchanged a glance, relief. Washing over them wasn't a victory, but it was a start. For now, the artifact and its secrets remained safe. As the officials filed out of the room, Carter lingered for a moment, his gaze fixed on Ethan. You're playing a dangerous game, he said quietly, Be careful how far you push it. Ethan nodded, his jaw tightening. You will. Because this isn't just about us. It's about everyone. When Carter finally left, closing the door behind him, Ethan sank into a chair, exhaustion overtaking him. Lisa joined him, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. We did good, she said softly. Now we wait. The portal shimmered in the center of the lab, its colors swirling like a living painting. It was both mesmerizing and unnerving, a doorway to places unknown. Ethan stood frozen, his eyes locked on the vortex as if afraid it might disappear, if he looked away. Lisa, however, was already moving, her mind racing with questions and concerns. Ethan, she said sharply, breaking the silence. We need to shut this down now. Ethan turned to her, his expression conflicted. Why? We've been working for days to get here. This is what we wanted to unlock the artifact's potential. And now that we have, you want to just step through, Lisa shot back, her voice rising. Do you even know where it leads? What's waiting on the other side? Ethan hesitated. He didn't know. None of them did. The portal was a mystery, a gateway to somewhere or something beyond human understanding. But the thought of closing it, of turning away from the opportunity they had worked so hard to create, felt wrong. Like giving up before the journey even began. We can't just leave it here, Ethan said finally, his tone firm. This changes everything. Imagine what we could learn, what we could discover. Lisa sighed, running a hand through her hair. I get it. I do. But think about the risks. What if it's dangerous? What if someone or something is watching us right now? Her words sent a chill down Ethan's spine, but he pushed the fear aside. If we don't take the risk, we'll never know. Isn't that why we're here? To push boundaries? To explore the unknown? Lisa opened her mouth to argue, then closed. Yet again, she knew he was right. That was the whole point of Project Ether, to go beyond what was possible, to reach for the stars. But standing in front of the glowing portal, the enormity of what they were doing hit her like a freight train. They weren't just scientists anymore. They were pioneers, stepping into uncharted territory. All right, Lisa said after a long pause. But we need to be smart about this. If we're going to investigate, we do it carefully. No rushing. And blind, Ethan nodded, grateful for her support. Together, they began preparing for what came next. They gathered equipment cameras, sensors, communication devices, anything that might help them document their findings. Lisa insisted on setting up safeguards, programming the lab systems to monitor the portal's energy output and alert them to any sudden changes. Every precaution mattered when dealing with something as unpredictable as alien technology. As they worked, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The portal seemed stable for now, but he doubted it would last forever. Power fueled it. It wasn't infinite. And then there was the signal, the faint transmission Lisa had detected earlier, emanating from the portal itself. She hadn't mentioned it to Ethan, not wanting to alarm him, but the implications weighed heavily on her mind. Was it a beacon, a warning, or something else entirely? Finally, they were ready. Standing at the edge of the portal, Ethan took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest. Lisa stood beside him, clutching a handheld scanner and looking as nervous as he felt. You sure about this? Lisa asked one last time, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan glanced at her, then back at the portal. No, he admitted, but I have to try. Without another word, he stepped forward, crossing the threshold into the unknown. For a moment, everything went weed, a blinding flash of light that engulfed his senses. Then, just as suddenly, the light faded, and Ethan found himself standing in a strange new world. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The sky above him was a deep shade of purple, streaked with ribbons of gold and silver. Strange plants stretched toward the horizon, their translucent leaves shimmering in the light of twin suns. In the distance, towering structures rose from the ground, their shapes fluid and organic, as if they had grown rather than been built. The air smelled sweet, almost floral, and carried a faint hum that resonated in his chest. Ethan stared in awe, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. This wasn't just another planet, it was an entirely different reality. He turned back to see Lisa stepping through the portal, her eyes wide with wonder. This is incredible, she breathed, taking in the alien landscape. Beautiful. It's more than that, Ethan said, his voice filled with reverence. It's proof. Proof that we're not alone. There's so much more out there than we ever imagined. For a while, they simply explored, marveling at the sights around them. Everything they touched, everything they saw, felt alive in a way that defied explanation. Even the ground beneath their feet seemed to pulse with energy, responding to their presence. But as they ventured deeper, Ethan began to notice something odd. The structures in the distance weren't just abandoned ruins, they were active. Lights flickered within their translucent walls, and faint movements hinted at life inside. Whoever or whatever had built this place was still here. We're not alone, Ethan said quietly, his excitement tinged with unease. Lisa nodded, gripping the scanner tightly. Stay close and keep your eyes open. They moved cautiously, their footsteps silent on the soft, spongy ground. As they approached one of the structures, the hum in the air grew louder, vibrating through their bodies. Suddenly a figure emerged. From the shadows, a tall, slender being with smooth, iridescent skin and elongated limbs. Its eyes glowed softly, and its movements were graceful, almost hypnotic. Ethan froze, unsure whether to run or stay. The creature tilted its head, studying them with an intelligence that felt ancient and profound. Then, without warning, it raised a hand, and a series of symbols appeared in the air between them, the same symbols etched into the artifact back in the lab. It's communicating, Lisa whispered, her voice trembling with excitement. It's trying to talk to us. Ethan nodded, stepping forward cautiously. He focused on the symbols, trying to make sense of them. To his surprise, he understood not the exact meaning, but the intent. The creature wasn't hostile. It was curious, just like them. They're testing us, Ethan realized aloud. Seeing if we're ready? For what? Lisa asked, her voice barely audible. Before Ethan could answer, the creature lowered its hand, and the symbols vanished. Turned and gestured for them to follow, its movements deliberate and clear. Without hesitation, Ethan started after it, Lisa close behind, as they walked. The landscape shifted subtly, the colors deepening and the hum growing stronger. The creature led them to a massive structure at the heart of the city, its walls shimmering. Like liquid glass? Inside, they found themselves surrounded by floating holograms, images of planets, stars, and galaxies, all connected by glowing lines. It's a map, Ethan said, his voice filled with awe. A map of the universe. And we're part of it. Lisa stared at the holograms, her mind racing. This isn't just exploration. This is connection. They're showing us how everything fits together. The creature watched them silently, its glowing eyes unreadable. Then, with a final gesture, it stepped back, leaving them alone in the vast chamber. What now? Lisa asked, turning to Ethan. Ethan hesitated, his thoughts spinning. He knew they couldn't stay here forever. Sooner or later, they would have to return to Earth to share what they had discovered. But he also knew that nothing would ever be the same. This world, these beings, they represented possibilities beyond imagination. We go back, Ethan said finally. But we come prepared. Next time we bring humanity with us. Lisa nodded, understanding the weight of his words. Together, they retraced their steps, following the path back to the portal. As they stepped through, returning to the familiar confines of the lab, they shared a look of quiet determination. They had seen the future. Now, it was up to them to build it. The second night in the lab felt different. The air was charged with a mix of excitement and tension. As if the alien artifact itself was aware of the progress Ethan and Lisa were making, they had barely slept, their minds racing with possibilities. Every discovery brought new questions. Every answer led to more mysteries. But they couldn't stop now, not when they were so close. Ethan sat at his workstation, hunched over a notebook filled with sketches and notes. His handwriting was messy, almost frantic, but each scribble represented hours of careful observation. Across from him, Lisa was immersed in analyzing the data they'd collected during Ethan's earlier interactions with the artifact. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, her eyes scanning lines of code and graphs that would have overwhelmed most people. Yet she moved with precision, her focus unshakable. "We're missing something," Ethan muttered, tapping his pen against the desk. "There's a piece of the puzzle we're not seeing." Lisa glanced up briefly, her expression thoughtful. "Maybe it's not about what we're missing. Maybe it's about how we're looking at it." "What do you mean?" Ethan asked. Leaning forward, we've been treating this like a machine, a tool, to be dissected and understood. But what if it's more than that? What if it's alive? Ethan froze, the idea hitting him like a lightning bolt. He stared at the artifact, its faint glow pulsing softly in the dim light. It didn't look alive, not in the traditional sense. There were no moving parts, no visible signs of life. And yet, the way it responded to his thoughts, the way it seemed to adapt to his presence, it wasn't behaving like an ordinary object. "You think it has some kind of consciousness?" Ethan asked slowly. "I don't know," Lisa admitted. "But it's worth considering. If it does, then maybe we need to approach it differently. Maybe we need to treat it like a partner rather than a subject." Ethan nodded, the idea resonating. With him, he stood up and walked over to the artifact, studying it closely. Its surface was smooth and cold, but there was something inviting about it, almost magnetic. He reached out cautiously, placing his hand on it once more. This time, he didn't close his eyes or try to force anything. Instead, he simply focused on the feeling of connection, the warmth spreading through his palm, subtle vibrations humming beneath his skin. "Hello," he whispered, half expecting nothing to happen. To his surprise, the artifact responded almost immediately. Its glow brightened, and the symbols on its surface began to shift again, forming patterns that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. Lisa watched in amazement, her skepticism giving way to awe. "It's reacting to you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Like it understands. Like it's trying to communicate," Ethan added, his eyes fixed on the glowing symbols. "Maybe it's testing us. Seeing if we're ready?" "For what?" Lisa asked, though she already suspected the answer. "For whatever it's designed to do," Ethan replied. "Travel, exploration, something bigger than we can imagine." They spent the next few hours experimenting, trying to decipher the artifact's behavior. Each time Ethan touched it, the symbols changed, forming new sequences that hinted at meaning but remained frustratingly elusive. Lisa recorded everything meticulously, her sharp mind piecing together fragments of understanding. A pattern emerged. The symbols weren't random, they were instructions, laid out in a language that defied human logic but somehow made sense to Ethan. "It's teaching me," Ethan realized aloud, his voice tinged with wonder. "Every time I interact with it shows me more." Lisa frowned, concern creeping into her expression. "Are you sure that's safe?" "You're letting it inside your mind, Ethan. We don't know what kind of effects that could have." "I'll be fine," Ethan assured her, though he wasn't entirely convinced himself. His head ached, and his thoughts felt scattered, like pieces of a dream slipping away. But he couldn't stop now, not when he was so close to unlocking its secrets. By the third day, exhaustion was beginning to take its toll. Dark circles shadowed Ethan's eyes, and Lisa's hands trembled slightly as she typed. Yet neither of them showed any signs of slowing down. The artifact had become an obsession, a challenge they couldn't walk away from. And as they worked, they began to notice something strange. The device seemed to grow stronger with each interaction. The energy readings spiked higher, the symbols glowed brighter. The hum that filled the lab grew louder. "It's evolving," Lisa said one evening, staring at the monitors. "Adapting to us." "Or to me," Ethan corrected, rubbing his temples. He had started to feel a strange pressure in his mind, like a weight pressing against his thoughts. It wasn't painful exactly, but it was unsettling. Still, he pushed through it, determined to keep going. That night, they made their biggest breakthrough yet. Ethan placed his hands on the artifact and closed his eyes, focusing intently. This time, instead of resisting the influx of information, he let it wash over him. Images flooded his mind, stars, galaxies, swirling clouds of energy. He saw pathways connecting distant points, bridges spanning unimaginable distances. And then, suddenly he understood. "It's a map," he said, opening his eyes. His voice was hoarse, but his excitement was undeniable. "A map of the universe. It's showing us how to travel between places." Lisa rushed to his side, her eyes wide. "You're sure?" "I'm sure," Ethan replied, pointing to the symbols on the artifact's surface. "These aren't just random shapes. They're coordinates, destinations." Lisa studied the patterns, her mind racing. "If you're right, this changes everything. We're talking about faster-than-light travel, interstellar exploration, and more," Ethan interrupted. "This isn't just about distance. It's about dimensions. Time, space, everything." Lisa shook her head, overwhelmed by the implications. "We need to tell someone. The team, the directors, everyone." "No," Ethan said firmly. "Not yet. Not until we're absolutely certain." Lisa hesitated, torn between her instincts as a scientist and her growing unease. "Ethan, this is too big for us to handle alone. If we make a mistake, we won't," Ethan insisted. "Trust me, Lisa, we're close. So close. Just a little longer," reluctantly Lisa agreed. She trusted Ethan, even if his relentless determination sometimes scared her. Together they continued their work, piecing together the final pieces of the puzzle. By the time the sun rose on the third day, it uncovered enough to activate the artifact's primary function. Ethan stood in front of the device, his heart pounding. Lisa hovered nearby, holding her breath. The room was silent, except for the soft hum of the artifact, its glow steady and inviting. "Ready?" Lisa asked, her voice trembling slightly. Ethan nodded, his resolve unwavering. "Let's do it." He placed his hands on the artifact and closed his eyes, focusing all his energy on the task ahead. The symbols flared to life, spinning and shifting, faster than ever before. A low rumble filled the lab, growing louder with each passing second. Then, without warning, a blinding flash of light erupted from the artifact, engulfing the room. When the light faded, Ethan opened his eyes. In the center of the lab stood a shimmering portal, a swirling vortex of colors and energy that seemed to stretch infinitely in every direction. It was beautiful, inspiring, and utterly terrifying. "We did it," Lisa whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. Ethan stared at the portal, his mind racing. "This is it," he said softly, "the gateway to the stars." But as they marveled at their achievement, neither of them noticed the faint signal emanating from the portal, a signal that traveled far beyond the confines of the lab, reaching out into the vastness of space. Somewhere, light years away, something stirred. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight, but Ethan and Lisa showed no signs of slowing down. The lab was eerily quiet now, save for the soft hum of computers and the occasional beep of monitoring equipment. Most of their colleagues had gone home hours ago, leaving the two of them alone with the alien artifact. Its faint glow illuminated the room, casting long shadows across the walls. Ethan sat cross-legged on the floor, his notebook open in front of him, while Lisa typed furiously at a nearby workstation. Neither of them had spoken much since their initial breakthrough, absorbed in their work to do anything but focus. Ethan's mind raced as he studied. The symbols he'd hastily scribbled earlier, they seemed to form a pattern, though it was far from clear what it meant. Some of the shapes resembled mathematical equations, while others looked more like abstract art. He traced one of the symbols with his finger, trying to commit it to memory. Each time he closed his eyes, he could almost feel the artifact's presence in his mind, like a faint whisper urging him to keep going. It was strange, even unsettling, but he couldn't deny the connection he felt to the device. Lisa glanced over her shoulder at him, pausing her typing. "You're staring at those notes like they hold the secrets of the universe," she said, her voice light but curious. "They might." Ethan replied without looking up. His tone was serious, though there was a hint of humor beneath it. If we can figure out what these symbols mean, we might be able to communicate with it directly. Lisa raised an eyebrow. You really think that's possible? I don't know, Ethan admitted, finally meeting her gaze. But I think it's worth trying. Lisa nodded slowly, turning back to her computer. She pulled up a series of images captured by the lab's sensors during Ethan's earlier interaction with the artifact. The data was chaotic spikes in energy readings, fluctuations in temperature, and bursts of electromagnetic activity, but amidst the noise, there were patterns. Patterns that matched the symbols Ethan had drawn. Look at this, Lisa said, pointing to the screen. When you touched the artifact, the energy output increased dramatically, and these spikes. She zoomed in on a section of the graph. They correspond to the symbols you wrote down. Ethan leaned closer, his eyes widening. That's incredible. So it's not just random noise. The artifact is responding to me. Or to your thoughts, Lisa added thoughtfully. Which means your theory might actually be right. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The implications of what they were discovering were staggering. If the artifact truly responded to mental input, then humanity wasn't just dealing with advanced technology. It was dealing with something almost alive. The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. Let's try again, Ethan said suddenly. Standing up, but this time, let's document everything. Lisa hesitated, then nodded. All right, but we need to be careful. We don't know what kind of risks we're taking here. Ethan didn't argue. He knew she was right. Whatever the artifact was, it was powerful and potentially dangerous. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the verge of something monumental. Together, they set up additional sensors around the device, ensuring every reaction would be recorded. Cameras were positioned to capture every angle, and microphones were placed to pick up any sounds. When everything was ready, Ethan took a deep breath and approached the artifact once more. This time, he didn't hesitate. Placing both hands on its surface, he closed his eyes and focused. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, he began to feel it, the same warmth and vibration from before, but stronger now. It spread through his arms, up his chest, and into his mind. Images flickered behind his eyelids, fleeting and indistinct. Shapes, colors, flashes of light. He tried to concentrate, to make sense of what he was seeing, but it was like trying to catch smoke with his bare hands. Ethan, Lisa's voice, broke through his concentration. Are you okay? He opened his eyes, blinking rapidly. The artifact's glow had intensified, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. Symbols danced across its surface, shifting and rearranging themselves faster than he could follow. Around him, alarms blared as the sensors detected massive spikes in energy. It's working, Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. It's showing me something. What are you seeing? Lisa asked, her eyes wide with a mix of awe and concern. I'm not sure, Ethan admitted. It's like pictures. Memories, maybe, or instructions. Lisa moved closer, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she analyzed the data pouring in. The energy levels are off the charts. This is unlike anything we've seen before. Ethan nodded, though he wasn't really listening. He was too focused on the artifact. Slowly, he reached out with his mind, trying to connect more deeply. The images became clearer, now scenes of vast landscapes, towering structures, and strange, otherworldly creatures. He saw flashes of movement, heard faint echoes of sound. It was overwhelming, but he pressed on, determined to understand. Then, without warning, the artifact let out a low hum that resonated through the entire lab. The symbols on its surface stopped moving, forming a single, intricate pattern. Ethan stared at it, his heart pounding. It looked like a map. A map of stars and planets connected by glowing lines. Lisa, Ethan said, his voice trembling with excitement. I think it's showing us how to use it. Lisa rushed to his side, her eyes scanning the pattern. A navigation system? That would explain why it's so complex. But how does it work? Before Ethan could answer, the artifact emitted another pulse of energy, stronger this time. The lights in the lab flickered, and the monitors displayed static. Ethan stumbled back, breaking contact with the device. The glow dimmed, and the symbols vanished, leaving the artifacts silent once more. "What just happened?" Lisa asked, her voice tinged with alarm. "I think I pushed it too far," Ethan admitted, rubbing his temples. His head throbbed, and his thoughts felt scrambled, like pieces of a puzzle jumbled together. "But I saw enough. It's a gateway, a way to travel between places." Lisa stared at him, her expression a mixture of disbelief and wonder. "Travel where? 2 other planets?" "Maybe," Ethan said. "Or 2 other dimensions. I don't know yet. But it's real, Lisa. It's real." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of what they'd uncovered settled over them like a heavy blanket. Ethan was frightened. Everything pointed to him being sewed. They weren't just looking at a piece of alien technology. They were looking at a key to exploring the universe. "We need to tell someone," Lisa said finally, breaking the silence. "The team, the directors, everyone." Ethan shook his head. "Not yet. Not until we know more. If word gets out, they'll take it away from us. Lock it up in some government facility and bury it under red tape." Lisa frowned. "Talking about keeping this secret? You realize how dangerous that is?" "I do," Ethan said firmly. "But think about it. We give them control, who knows what they'll do with it? Weaponize it? Exploit it? We have a chance to do something amazing to change the world. But only if we stay ahead of them." Lisa hesitated, torn between her instincts as a scientist and her trust in Ethan. Finally, she sighed. "All right. For now, we keep it between us, but we need to move fast. Once they see the data we've collected tonight, they'll start asking questions." Ethan nodded. "Agreed." Over the next several hours, they pored over the information they'd gathered, piecing together fragments of understanding. The artifact's behavior suggested it operated on principles far beyond human physics concepts that defied conventional logic. Yet, despite its complexity, Ethan sensed that it was designed to be intuitive. Whoever had created it wanted users to learn, to adapt, and to grow. As dawn approached, exhaustion began to creep in. Ethan slumped against the edge of a workstation, rubbing his eyes. "We can't stop," he said, stifling a yawn. "Not now." Lisa smiled faintly. "You're relentless. You know that?" "It's the only way," Ethan replied. "We're going to master this thing. We need to push ourselves. Harder than anyone else ever has." Lisa didn't argue. She admired his determination, even if it sometimes bordered on recklessness. Together, they continued their work, fueled by a shared vision of what the future might hold. By the time the sun rose, painting the desert sky in shades of orange and pink, they had made significant progress. They hadn't unlocked all of the artifact's secrets, not even close, but they had taken the first step toward unraveling its mysteries. And in that moment, surrounded by the hum of machines and the faint glow of the alien device, Ethan and Lisa knew they were onto something extraordinary.
Oh.
Something that could change the course of history. All they needed was time. 3 days, perhaps. Maybe less. Ethan Cole sat at his desk, staring blankly at the glowing screen in front of him. The hum of computers and the occasional murmur of conversation filled the air around him. He was in a large, open room that looked more like a futuristic spaceship than a research lab. Rows of sleek workstations lined the walls, each one occupied by scientists who were deeply focused on their tasks. Monitors displayed complex equations, swirling diagrams, and strange symbols that seemed to dance across the screens. In the center of the room stood a massive, metallic object, a piece of alien technology, recovered from a mysterious crash site years ago. It was the heart of Project Ether, an ambitious effort to decode and master something far beyond human understanding. Ethan wasn't particularly remarkable at first glance. He was a man in his early 30s with short brown hair, glasses perched on his nose, and a slim build. His clothes were simple jeans, sneakers, and a plain gray t-shirt, but they were practical for long hours spent in the lab. What set Ethan apart wasn't his appearance, but the way he thought. While most people approached problems methodically, Ethan's mind worked differently. He saw connections where others saw chaos, patterns where others saw randomness. Right. Now he was growing frustrated. For months, the team had been trying to make sense of the alien artifact. It was unlike anything anyone had ever encountered before. The surface of the device was smooth and cold to the touch, etched with intricate designs that glowed faintly under certain conditions. No one knew what it did or how it worked, but everyone agreed on one thing: mastering it could change the course of human history. Some believed it held the key to limitless energy. Others thought it might unlock faster than light travel. Whatever its purpose, the stakes were high, but progress had been painfully slow. Every attempt to activate the device ended in failure. Teams of physicists, engineers, and linguists had poured countless hours into studying it, yet they remained no closer to understanding its secrets. That morning, during a meeting in the lab's conference room, Dr. Lisa Monroe, brilliant physicist with sharp green eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, had delivered some sobering news. Based on current projections, she estimated it would take at least 10 years to fully comprehend the alien technology. 10 years. The words echoed in Ethan's mind as he stared at the artifact, frustration bubbling inside him. "That's too long," Ethan muttered under his breath, breaking the silence of his workstation. Across the room, Lisa glanced up from her own computer, raising an eyebrow at him. She had overheard his comment and smirked slightly. "You have a better idea?" she asked, her tone teasing but not unkind. Lisa was one of the few people who didn't dismiss Ethan outright. Though she was older and more experienced, she respected his unconventional approach. Still, even she couldn't deny the enormity of the challenge ahead. Ethan hesitated for a moment, then shook his head. "No," he admitted, "but there has to be another way." Lisa leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "Look, I get it. We all want answers sooner rather than later. But this isn't some puzzle you can solve overnight. This is alien tech. It doesn't play by our rules." "I know that," Ethan replied, turning to face her. "But maybe we're looking at it the wrong way. Maybe we're overcomplicating things." Lisa tilted her head, intrigued. "What do you mean?" Ethan gestured toward the artifact. "Think about it. Every time we try to interact with it, we use machines, sensors, algorithms, all these layers between us and the device itself. What if we just tried talking to it, or connecting with it directly?" Lisa frowned, considering his suggestion. "You're suggesting we communicate with it using our thoughts?" "Why not?" Ethan said, leaning forward. "We've already seen how it reacts to physical touch. Maybe it's designed to respond to mental input, too. After all, whoever built this thing probably didn't rely on keyboards and buttons." Lisa let out a soft laugh. "It's quite a leap, Ethan. Even if your theory is correct, how exactly do you plan to test it?" Ethan shrugged. "I don't know yet, but I'm willing to try." Lisa studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "All right. Let me know when you figure it out. Just be careful, okay?" Ethan smiled faintly. Always, as the day wore on, the lab grew quieter. Most of the researchers left for home, leaving only a handful behind to finish up their work. Ethan stayed late as usual, unable to tear himself away from the artifact. There was something about it that drew him in, almost as if it were calling to him. He circled the device slowly, examining every detail. Up close, the glowing patterns seemed to shift and shimmer as though alive. He reached out tentatively, placing his hand on its surface. It felt cool at first, but after a few seconds, warmth spread through his palm. A faint vibration hummed beneath his fingers, subtle but unmistakable. Curiosity took hold of Ethan, ignoring protocol. He closed his eyes and focused intently, trying to clear his mind. At first, nothing happened. Then suddenly he felt a jolt, like a spark of electricity shooting through his arm. Startled, he opened his eyes and stumbled backward. The artifact's glow had brightened, pulsing steadily now. Symbols appeared on its surface, forming shapes that seemed familiar yet impossible to decipher. "What the?" Ethan whispered, his heart racing. He reached for his notebook, scribbling down everything he could remember about the symbols. They weren't random, they formed sequences, repeating patterns. Could they be some kind of language? Or perhaps instructions? Before he could think further, footsteps echoed behind him. Turning quickly, he saw Lisa standing in the doorway, her expression a mix of surprise and concern. "What are you doing here?" she asked, stepping closer. Her gaze shifted to the artifact, which was still glowing faintly. "Did you do this?"
Ethan
Hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. Finally, he nodded. "I think so. I touched it, and something changed." Lisa moved to examine the device, her movements cautious. "This is incredible. How did you manage to trigger a reaction like this?" "I don't know," Ethan admitted. "I just focused, tried to connect with it somehow." Lisa looked at him skeptically. "You're saying you communicated with it using your mind?" "It sounds crazy, I know," Ethan said, running a hand through his hair. "But it worked. Look at it tits, responding." Lisa studied the artifact for a moment longer, then turned back to Ethan. "If you're right, this changes everything. But we need to document this properly. If we can replicate your results, we might finally crack it," Ethan finished, excitement creeping into his voice. Lisa nodded, determination flashing in her eyes. "Let's get started." Together, they began running tests, feeding data into the lab's systems while carefully monitoring the artifact's behavior. Hours passed unnoticed as they worked side by side, fueled by a shared sense of purpose. For the first time in months, Ethan felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they were onto something big.